I'm joined by the perfect guest to have this next conversation. Larry, wonderful to have you back on the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Jason. Great to see you too.
That's a wonderful set you're on today. Looking very sharp, I have to say.
Well, I have to thank my friends at Radio America, Rich McFadden and Al Peterson. They set it up. They've got a great studio here. And of course, this is where I do my radio show. It'll be recorded later today, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. So a little advertisement there. You can go to radioamerica.com and listen to the podcast if you don't get it in your hometown. And you can go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org because it's posted there as well as our YouTube channel.
Easy ways to find it at freedomwatchusa.org, and that's also the place that people can go to financially support the efforts of Larry and his team at Freedom Watch. We've covered so much of that, and what you're doing is super important, Larry. You've been challenging Robert Mueller, and it's never easy in the world of law. Certainly, you had a huge victory with Dr. Corsi, and that really changed the course of the Mueller investigation, as we've discussed in the past. It's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, this Mueller investigation, in that it just will not go away. It can't be stopped, it seems. And there's been a lot of testimony in Congress this past week. They're holding William Barr in contempt of Congress for upholding the law.
It's basically a giant reality series, Jason. We've talked about that. You've got the Democrats trying to set the president up for impeachment. In other words, putting him in a position where he has no choice but to move to quash the subpoenas which have been issued for him and documents in and around him dealing with the Mueller investigation. Now his son is being called in by an establishment Republican, Chairman Richard Burr of the Senate Intel Committee. They're creating a catch-22 where he has to resist to get this thing over with for the good of the country and the good of himself and his family. But on the other hand, you've got William Barr, the Attorney General, who's threatening, and I would say it's quite a veiled threat, that he's going to do an investigation into the Steele dossier, into the origins of the investigation. And I've seen this so many times before. It's basically mutual assured destruction. The Democrats clearly want to move to impeachment. I think the president actually would like to see them impeached. It'll probably help his base, galvanize everything. He'll never be convicted in the Senate. But on the other hand, Barr is pushing back because he's trying to get them off his back, so to speak, with these threats of an investigation. But will anything happen in the end in terms of actually bringing about justice for all that went on leading up to this witch hunt? Almost 100% no. And that's why at Freedom Watch, we are pursuing very strong measures. On behalf of Jerry Corsi, we have sued Robert Mueller for breach of grand jury secrecy, for illegal mass and unconstitutional surveillance, for other high crimes, so to speak, against Corsi. In other words, trying to force him to lie under oath to implicate the president or be indicted. Dr. Corsi refused. I came in, and we were successful in not having him indicted. So these are the kinds of things we're doing at Freedom Watch, and I don't want the people to be confused that our government's going to be any different than it's been for the last several decades. This is just a dog and pony show to some extent, and to a large extent, in the capital of corruption where I am here today, Washington, D.C.
So your feeling, Larry, is that Barr's threat to investigate the Steele dossier is an empty threat. He's not going to actually do that.
I think he'll investigate. Will anything come out of it? No, it never does. Look at the Inspector General who's going to be supposedly issuing a report on this just in the next few weeks. He already issued a report with regard to Comey, Andrew McCabe, and others.
Was that
Horowitz? No consequence occurred for that. And in Washington, D.C., this deep state, this intelligence state, where they've gathered dirt on everybody in this city in one manner, shape, or form, they don't push too hard. And these are for show, not for dough. And see, I've criticized Sean Hannity and Fox News in the past. You know that. I've done it on your show. I do it on my radio show. Don't hold out false hope that there's going to be indictments and heads rolling. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen in this environment in Washington where both sides can destroy each other. But what will happen, and ironically, it suits both the Democrats' purpose and Trump's purpose, is to trigger an impeachment here, because when the Democrats do that, it's going to galvanize Trump's base. I think it will probably assure his reelection, because you've got this guy Nadler. He's completely out of control, the head of the Judiciary Committee. He's not a very attractive individual, to say the least, mentally or physically. And you've got Adam Schiff. You've got others up there. You've got the Muslim Congress women and men going after him. You've got Cortez. And, you know, it's more than a witch hunt at this point. And it's going to, the tragedy is that the country is grinding to a halt when we have these very serious crises in Venezuela, Iran, North Korea. And that's why we're doing our best at Freedom Watch to dampen it down, to bring hard-hitting cases on behalf of the American people. Our citizens' grand juries that are going to begin later this month, we're going to be pushing there. We're going to be indicting Mueller. We're going to be indicting Rosenstein, Comey, a whole host of individuals, is that the American people need to do it for themselves. Don't be fooled by the ratings game on the cable networks on both sides. Understand that we, the people, have to do it for ourselves. And just go back 30 years. Nobody's been held accountable. You've got Hillary Clinton out there, you know, in an incredibly arrogant way, saying that she lost because the election was fixed. She won't give up. She knows she's not going to be prosecuted by the Justice Department. And, excuse the French, she's whoring it up. And that's why you have to have a group like Freedom Watch that brings hard-hitting cases. Last week I wrote a column called Freedom Watch, Not Just Documents and Hype. We are actually trying to be the People's Justice Department.
Yeah. I think Hillary Clinton misspoke, Larry, when she said that. She lost the election despite the fact that it was rigged. She was the one trying to rig it, and the Mueller report and the Steele dossier go into all those details there. So the grand juries, the citizens' grand juries, they're coming up really soon. So it is important for people who want to see that move forward to get onto freedomwatchusa.org and support the citizens' grand juries. People can donate. And of course, doing this type of stuff, it takes money. There's staff, there's all kinds of travel involved. And I will be there with Larry covering it. So I hope that people will also support Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth or subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth and becoming sponsors. We're still talking about the location for the citizens' grand juries, but Larry, help people understand for a minute what will happen when you indict these politicians and people in the citizens' grand juries. What's the best case scenario? What kind of outcome can people expect to see from a successful citizens' grand jury?
Well, we do have a place that we're doing. It's Ventura, California, Jason.
Okay.
And we're going to have witnesses. Witnesses like Dr. Jerry Corsi with regard to Robert Mueller. Witnesses like Demetric Penny, my very brave African-American policeman client in Dallas, who unfortunately was part of that massacre. He was assaulted. Witnesses like the father of Patrick Zamaripa, who was killed there. We're going to have Farrakhan indicted. We're going to indict Representative Omar for immigration fraud. You know, this is just step one. We're going to be coming to your hometown at some point, and we do have the authority to do it ourselves. Justice Scalia, as I've said before on your show, in 1992, in a case United States versus Williams, found in a majority opinion that the grand jury belongs to the American people, not to the three branches of government. So we can peacefully and legally take justice into our own hands when our own Justice Department has failed us over and over and over again. So we will bring indictments. Phase 2, trials. We'll have a retired judge sitting over that. We'll pick a jury. Phase 3, after convictions, and I'm confident we'll get convictions, sentencing. And then, of course, there's meting out those sentences, and we're going to ask President Trump to enforce them. And if not, then we'll seek to enforce them peacefully and legally ourselves. If nothing else, we are setting an example. We're educating the American people that the justice system belongs to us. It does not belong to the political hacks in Washington, D.C., in both the legislative branch of government, the executive branch of government, or the judiciary. And one thing I want to point out, I was just thinking about this the other day. I started Judicial Watch in 1994 to watch judges. I've published articles about what happened last week with my brave client, another brave client, they're all brave, Chief Justice Roy Moore, where a Reagan appointee transferred the case to New York. Now, that doesn't end the case. It's just starting. But he insulted my client. I introduced him as Chief Justice Roy Moore, and he shoots back, well, he's not Chief Justice anymore. He sat on a simple motion to transfer for 8 months, did nothing, came in, wrote his decision to transfer the case to New York on bogus grounds without the benefit of even oral argument. We went through this charade so it could be published. The judge's name is Thomas Hogan. He's actually a Reagan appointee. He's 81 years old. But this negative leftist media, which we're fighting as well at Freedom Watch, has influenced thinking with people, even a judge like this. Or maybe he's worn out and doesn't really want the case anymore. He wants just to, take it easy. But this is why I started Judicial Watch, watching judges. Now, it's ironic that Judicial Watch doesn't do hardly anything with judges at all anymore. All they basically do is get documents. But we are still bringing ethics complaints and enforcement actions against judges. And we're also taking the hard steps of bringing real solid lawsuits, not just Freedom of Information Act, but whether it's RICO or whether it's our class action lawsuits with regard to social media under the antitrust laws to try to make sure that conservatives aren't discriminated against, whether it's defamation lawsuits for clients like Sheriff Arpaio, Jerry Corsi, Chief Justice Roy Moore, and others. We are going against this leftist media because they're destroying this country. And that's super important because no one else is doing that. I mean, yeah, there's a random case here and there, but nobody's doing it in a major way except Freedom Watch. So, go to Freedom Watch USA, support that, usa.org. Support that because we are your Justice Department. I can't say that enough. We're the mouse that roared. We need to get bigger. And thank God we've got partners like you and Radio America that we can get the word out to the American people to mobilize them like we mobilized the colonies in the days leading up to 1776. We're in a second American Revolution right now.
Yeah.
The country's headed down the drain.
Larry, I'm not sure if people fully appreciate the importance of the victory that you had with Dr. Corsi and sort of derailing the crooked Mueller investigation. As you said, the leftist media, everybody takes what happened to Judge Moore and they make a big headline about how the judge has delivered a victory to Sacha Baron Cohen. It's really not true, right? This is just some procedural step in the trial.
Yeah, that's all that was. And here's what happened with Chief Justice Roy Moore. By the way, he's been vindicated. He has lawsuits against these women who smeared him in Alabama. If he decides to run for the Senate, he's overwhelming favorite to win. At this point, it was the Democrat and the Republican establishments that tried to destroy him down there because he's a threat, because he's independent, because he's not a yes man. But this was just simply a motion to transfer the case to New York. And we said it can't be transferred, Your Honor. The release, which Chief Justice Moore signed, was fraudulent. He was induced to come to Washington, D.C. to get an award for the 70th anniversary of Israel. Today is the 71st anniversary of Israel, by the way. It's been a year. He was then defrauded by Sacha Baron Cohen, who appeared in disguise as a retired Mossad agent, and then said he had a device developed by the Israeli Defense Forces that could detect pedophiles if it beeped. And, of course, he set it off. And he defamed this very fine man as a pedophile, which he's not. But this is what the leftist media and Hollywood does, and they need to pay a price. And when I sued Sacha Baron Cohen for Judge Moore, it's interesting, but Showtime has canceled the series. They realize that they're going downhill. So we have set a precedent here that you have to stand up to the bullies. You can't roll over. You can't hope that things are okay, but you also need entities like yourself at Crowdsource the Truth and Radio America and others to get the word out so people understand that there are those out there like ourselves that are fighting for their interests in the vision of our founding fathers, to preserve that, to preserve our republic, our freedoms, and our liberties.
That's interesting, Larry, that Showtime has canceled the show. I wasn't really familiar with that. I mean, everybody knows Sacha Baron Cohen is like Borat, and his whole thing is setting people up and tricking them. And I presume he's going to argue that this was parody or comedy or whatever, but it's actually not. I mean, it's one thing to, make fun of someone and make them look like they're stupid in some kind of, comedic situation. But to outright accuse someone of being a pedophile, and particularly when this has been a huge defamatory situation for the senator already, I think Showtime obviously realizes the substantial liability that they have. And I mean, he really did deceive Roy Moore and got him to sign a release before he said the things that he said. Isn't
That's
that right?
And I never really answered your question, Jason, is that we said to Judge Hogan that release is invalid. The clause that says the case, if there's any litigation, should be tried in New York is invalid because the whole agreement's invalid. And the judge just simply ignored that argument and transferred it in any event. So this is what I'm talking about. Judges are, in principle, our most important public servants, but in practice, they become a danger to society. And there are very few good ones. And I might add, with Sheriff Arpaio, where we've brought these defamation actions against CNN, against Chris Cuomo, against the Huffington Post, against other entities out there, we drew a very good judge, Royce Lamberth, I've had in the past, and I believe that we will get a fair shake there. But you don't always get a fair shake with these very politicized judges. So you have to be prepared to take it up on appeal. You have to keep fighting. It's like chopping a tree. Eventually, you hope the tree will fall. And we are fighting, step by step against these very nefarious leftist entities.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have the incorrect notion that if you didn't do anything wrong, or if the law says X, Y, or Z, everything's going to work out okay. But something that I've been learning just really in the year or two that you and I have known each other, and I've been going to some of the hearings that you're involved in, some of the trials that you're involved in, and dealing with my own legal stuff, there's a lot to this sort of chess game, the poker tournament of the law. And the actual law itself is almost sort of just like the rule book, and knowing the rules of chess versus being a skilled and successful chess player are two vastly different things, aren't they?
That's right. It's very complex, particularly if you're a plaintiff. You have the burden of proof. There are many ways, if you're a plaintiff, that a case can get derailed. If you're a defendant, you delay, you pull all kinds of stunts. But I've become a plaintiff's lawyer over the years and a criminal defense lawyer on the other side. And a lot of people don't like litigation. They don't like court practice because it's very intensive. And, 16 hours a day frequently. And it's something which is very uncertain when you get into it. And you just have to keep pushing. You have to be aggressive. You have to keep fighting. Let me give you just a recent example. There's some humor here in a way. I've become an expert on defamation. I was before, but this has become a growth industry. Everybody's getting defamed. And Dr. Corsi and I were both defamed by Roger Stone and Michael Caputo, his lackey, for lack of a better word. And I have a long history with that. I won't deal with that on this show. But they were evading service of process. I couldn't even serve the complaint on either of them to get it going for this defamation lawsuit. And I had to be very creative. So I read in the newspaper that Roger Stone, who claimed to have since found God, and that he's actually being tried because it's God's will to tell the truth. Now, I hope he does believe in God, but frankly, at this point, it's, knowing Roger in the past, it's a fundraising gambit in all likelihood to send out the evangelical supporters and things like that. And, I'm a Jewish Christian myself, so I'm not knocking that. But what I'm basically saying is that he decides he's now found God, but he's going to go do a fundraiser at a strip club in Richmond, Virginia. So I guess he was celebrating his revelation. And I had to have the process serve him as he was going into the strip club.
Oh, man.
Of all places. Yeah, and just a day later, of course, Caputo threw in the cards because Stone didn't want to be in the case by himself, so he told his lackey Caputo to you see on TV from time to time, to come into the case too. So, even just serving a simple complaint is time-consuming and expensive, and you have to be prepared to fight. And let me say one thing about Roger Stone is that Jerry Corsi never did anything to harm Roger Stone, but Roger, went after Corsi, threatened him, coerced him, defamed him, and of course I was part of that because I was his lawyer. But Jerry never said a bad word about Roger Stone, and So this is really undeserved on his part. So we had to bring a defamation case, and we had to bring it basically, to shut Roger Stone up, because this is where he does things. That's how I got indicted with Randy Credico. He threatened to kill Randy Credico and his dog. According to the indictment, he tampered with a witness. He didn't tell the truth, allegedly, with regard to documents. Jerry played it straight. And because he played it straight and he was honest and he wouldn't cave in, the special counsel Robert Mueller, who was telling him to lie to implicate the president or be indicted, and offered him a plea deal if he would lie, Jerry stood fast. And Jerry's a hero. Jerry's the only one in all of this. And I was proud to represent him as my client and as a friend who actually fought the law and won. Law meaning Robert Mueller, who's not really the law. He's lawless.
Yeah.
But you see, it's so intensive to do litigation, and that's why Judicial Watch, Fitton, who's not a lawyer, they don't want to do it. They want to do the easy stuff. But someone's got to do the hard stuff. It's more than documents. It's actually getting justice with the documents you get. And that's what we do at Freedom Watch.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. I mean, the victory with Dr. Corsi really changed the course of the Mueller investigation. It crumbled shortly after that. People should go to freedomwatchusa.org and support Larry and his team there, because it seems clear to me, Larry, that Robert Mueller was trying to put pressure on Dr. Corsi to plea out to something that he didn't do, and then get Roger Stone to do essentially the same thing. Use those guilty pleas in an impeachment against Donald Trump, or certainly in the court of public opinion on the news and things like that, to make it look like something terrible was going on. So let me shift you to that, because we've been speaking quite a bit about Gerald Nadler and his committee's investigation into the investigation, which is absolutely ridiculous. I've been watching some of the proceedings, and it's remarkable to me. I feel like Congress is more off the rails than it ever has been. We've got them really saying and doing some ridiculous things. They have held William Barr in contempt of Congress for what appears to be following the law. And we had Representative Johnson, who said something interesting during the hearing, was it 2 days ago, where he was talking about there are certain circumstances under which 6E material, grand jury material, as I understand it, Larry, and hopefully you can take us through this in a more detailed kind of a way. The purpose of a grand jury is they're impaneled when they are investigating allegations of crime to try to generate evidence, determine if there is evidence sufficient to proceed with prosecuting criminals. And it's different than a criminal trial or a civil trial in that some of the testimony is done in secret, and if no evidence is ever found, the whole thing is just sealed and nobody can look at it. And now Nadler has been calling for all of this information to be released. It could compromise the very process of grand jury investigations and could have devastating effects moving forward. But it was Representative Johnson who made reference to circumstances under which 6E material can be released, although he didn't tell us what those circumstances are.
It's generally to be able to defend yourself. For instance, the judge in Roger Stone's criminal case today, Amy Berman Jackson, just released the Mueller report to his lawyers so he could defend himself. That was the right thing for her to do. They're not going to be able to share that with anybody, but he's entitled to see the grand jury information that concerns him. And I might add, to the best of my knowledge, Roger Stone was never offered a plea agreement. He was the target. And I believe, and this is just a guess, that with all the stuff they got out of his house, there could very well be a supersedious indictment coming down the line, a second indictment. I don't know that, but that seems to have been the motive in raiding his house. They were looking for more than what they actually indicted him for. But as far as what Nadler's doing, Nadler, who is a lawyer, is a legal prostitute, and he's simply playing a game here. He's trying to, deceive the American people that somehow they're entitled to see the entire Mueller report. And it's my understanding that only about 2% of that report was redacted, that is, grand jury material removed. And I heard this morning from a number of sources that there's not one Democrat on that Judiciary Committee who's actually even read the Mueller report. They didn't even bother to get what they had. My book is called Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. Well, I think Gerald Nadler is the major whore in Congress today, followed by Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, and, there's some Republicans, too, like Richard Burr, who is going after the president's son right now. He's an anti-Trumper. Somehow I think he fell in love with the ranking minority member, Mark Warner, and basically he just does what Mark Warner wants. It was weird. I sat on a hearing many, many months ago, and the interaction between the two, it was like they were lovebirds, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. I mean, it was bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
So how do we ensure, if this 6E information is released to a private citizen like Roger Stone, how do we ensure that he doesn't release it?
We can't. We really can't. And there are members of Congress right now who have access to the unredacted version, a limited number of congressmen. So it's also false that they haven't been able to see the redactions. They have been able to see that. So this is a dog and pony show, but it's a dog and pony show. It's reality series on both sides.
Right.
Because you have Nadler and the Democrats trying to set Trump up. They gave him an offer he couldn't accept. They can't accept to turn this report over. It's a violation of the law through the Attorney General, Bill Barr. But then if he doesn't turn it over and Trump orders him not to turn it over and says he's not going to be complying with subpoenas to bring the entire White House in for testimony before the Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committees, now they're going to impeach him, claiming that there's a, quote, constitutional crisis. That's the latest version. And that'll be the trigger to impeach the president. He won't get convicted in the Senate, but it's going to really harm this country. So I'm doing whatever we can to prevent that. But on the other side of the coin, you have Bill Barr saying, well, we're going to be looking into the spying on the Trump campaign and this and that. Yeah, they'll look into it. But nothing's going to happen because it never does happen. But Barr's doing that to say, hey, you want to gore my ox? I'll gore your ox. Excuse me. And in the end, they both go away like they did during the Chinagate scandal in the late 1990s, which I helped trigger at Judicial Watch. They'll both go home. They'll make their money. They'll get reelected. And, nothing will happen in terms of justice for the American people unless a group like Judicial Watch is pushing to bring about justice on behalf of the citizenry.
Well, Larry, in the sense of being optimistic, I think there are a
lot
of people.
Freedom Watch. It was a Freudian slip. I said Judicial Watch.
Oops.
I'm the founder, so I consider myself still to be that's still my little baby, Judicial Watch. But I run Freedom Watch now.
People should go to freedomwatchusa.org and support what Larry and his team are doing there. It's critically important, and I think we would have definitely seen a different outcome, or very possibly in the Mueller investigation, had Larry not interceded on Dr. Corsi's behalf and challenged Robert Mueller and his ridiculous stuff there. I just wanted to say, in the interest of being optimistic, Larry, a lot of people might have looked at Donald Trump running for president and, before the election would have said, oh, hey, he's not an establishment guy. There's no way he could possibly win. But he did. So maybe is it possible that we're in kind of a different era now and maybe something will happen? Maybe William Barr will, in fact, go after some of these people and indict some of these people. And, it certainly seems like they're fearful of that. Congress is acting in a way that I've never seen before.
Jason, I would hope that you're right, but, the past is a prologue. I haven't seen it in the 30 years I've been doing this. And Bill Barr is now under such pressure that for him to go after the Democrats would be open season for them to really go for his throat. And I don't believe that's going to happen. And all he said so far is we're going to look into it. And then he even said at one of the hearings a few weeks back, I have no evidence that anything that was done was illegal. He's never said that. So I don't think that's going to happen. I hope it would happen. But I'll tell you something. I'm in Washington, D.C. today. And I spent months and months lobbying Capitol Hill to look into this mass illegal surveillance against the American people. I went to Devin Nunes' office. I went to Richard Burr's office. Devin Nunes was chairman of the House Intel Committee. I went to the Senate Intel Committee with Richard Burr. None of them wanted to do it. They just wanted to keep their focus very narrow. Because the intel agencies and the FBI have stuff on everybody in this town. It's mutual assured destruction. So do the social media companies. They have the same technology as the CIA and the FBI and the rest of them. That's why no one goes after them. They just complain. And this is the country we live in today. Look, if you have a Lexus in your house, the social media companies can hear everything and see everything you're doing. So there's that fear that even if you've not done anything wrong, that if I push too hard, I will be destroyed. And listen to the hot air coming out of Lindsey Graham. You know, months ago, I wanted to meet with Lindsey Graham. I asked a friend of mine to line it up, who's from South Carolina. Nothing happened. Lindsey Graham says, I'm going to look into this. What does he do in the last week? He sends the issue of the abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to Chief Justice John Roberts to investigate. I mean, that's the last person that you would ask to investigate anything.
Why?
Roberts is pure establishment. There's been rumors for years, okay, whether it's true or not, that Roberts is a closet gay, okay? Now, in today's world, being a closet gay is not the end of the world, okay? I mean, you'll get an award for that, okay? But he's from a generation that doesn't want that out. Now, do they have that on him? Is that why he flipped on Obamacare? Is that why he's now voting with the liberals on the Supreme Court? And again, whether he's gay or not doesn't really matter. No one cares anymore, okay? But apparently he does. And this is the kind of stuff that happens. And you've got Lindsey Graham. He's in the same situation.
Is Roberts married, Larry?
He's married. In Washington, D.C., married means nothing. Okay?
Well, but in other words, I mean, I think what I'm understanding, and I agree with you, being gay is not a big deal, but lying to your wife is. So if it comes out that he's gay and his wife doesn't know that. I'm not accusing
him of anything. I'm just saying there's rumors out there. Is that why he's all of a sudden become a leftist? Are they threatening him with that? Because that generation, you know, if they are in the closet, doesn't want it out. And I'm talking plainly.
I just want to clarify the nature of how someone could be blackmailed, because
same thing with Lindsey Graham. I mean, you know, it's more than rumor that Lindsey Graham is gay, and he's the one that told John McCain to give the Steele dossier, which McCain had gotten a hold of. It was given to him by the Democrats and the Clinton campaign, great Republican. He was the one who told McCain to give it to the FBI. You think he's going to really push on that, Lindsey Graham? So, you know, there's a story about everybody. Let's go back to impeachment. I'm going to have Bob Barr on my radio show this week. And Newt Gingrich compromised the impeachment of Bill Clinton because he was having an affair with his current wife, Calista, who was working for a gay Republican congressman by the name of Steve Gunterson, who was friendly with Barney Frank, who was an open gay. Barney Frank revealed the affair that he learned of the affair that Gingrich was having. This compromised Gingrich. And it's why they never went for the jugular with Clinton, with the Chinagate scandal, the IRS scandal, the Travelgate scandal, the Filegate, and everything else. They just wanted to wound Clinton. And it worked because George W. Bush was elected. It hurt Gore in the election. And this is the cynical game that is played in Washington. It's not for real. It's to further their own political interests, their interests for money and power. It's not to further the interests of the American people. And that's why I've said when I come here, it's like there's an evil cloud hanging over this city. I'm here because I have to be here. I'm here because I'm trying to change things. I'm here because we need to restore this country to that shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan used to talk about. And, you know, there's a passage in Isaiah in the Bible, Old Testament, which says that the faithful city has become the tarnished city. And God looks to the counselors and lawyers, and the counselors and judges, to restore the tarnished city to the faithful city. And when I wrote my book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment, I have that passage from Isaiah in the preamble, because that's what I'm trying to do. I feel that I'm trying to do what God would want me to do. And others are trying to do that too. We do it in different ways. You're doing it. Radio America does it. Other people do it. But we really are in a crisis here, because if people watch TV, you talk about my book, Whores, I guess the sequel's going to be Whores 2. They're back. And they're back with a vengeance.
Revenge of the whores.
You watch Nadler and you watch Schiff and you watch these people in Capitol, you watch all the Democrats going lockstep with lying to the American people, and then the Republicans that do the same thing on the other side, but not to that extent these days. I might add, the Democrats are in a world of their own. And you look at it, and you can have an IQ of 10 and figure out what's going on, and it's really serious. And that's why I watch Fox and I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch them all just to know where they're coming from, so I can do something about it. But do I believe anything that's said on any network? I really believe very little.
Yeah. And you've just reminded me, Larry, I wanted to clarify something that was said earlier. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from our personal conversations offline and conversations we've had on the show, I believe you don't have an objection to congressional representatives being Muslim. It's the Islamist congressional representatives that we have a growing number of who seem intent on creating an Islamic caliphate and overthrowing the government and taking often illegal steps to do that. Is that correct?
No, you're right. I mean, there are good Muslims in the world. I mean, the ones I know have renounced Islam, I might add. But the fact that you've got these radicals up there, like, Representative Omar, like Representative Tlaib, like Representative Hakeem Jeffries, who this week suggested, he's from Brooklyn, that the Russians had President Trump inserted into the White House. I mean, these are radical Muslims who not only hate Jews, they hate Christians, they hate the state of Israel.
They hate America.
They hate the president. He's a great supporter of America. They hate America. They want Sharia law.
Yeah. And
I might add, our friend Laura Loomer, who's exposed a lot of this, she didn't say anything that was hate speech. She's simply telling the truth. I'll be filing a lawsuit for her in the next several days against Facebook and Twitter and the rest. And, you have to be able to say it like it is. And here's another thing, Jason. I was thinking about this just the other day. I'm a civil rights lawyer, okay? I have clients who are African-American, very brave people, my friends, my colleagues. The African-American conservatives have more guts than the white conservatives do. They stick their neck out. The whites run away from these issues because they'll be called racist. They don't want to be called racist. But why is it so vicious towards Trump? And why did they lay off of Obama? Was it because Obama is African-American and Muslim? Because if you're one of those two groups, you're above the law these days. You're untouchable. Because if you do anything, you're called a racist, or you're removed from Facebook, or removed from Twitter.
Yeah.
And you're retaliated against. And we are all equal in this country. We all deserve equal rights. I believe in civil rights. But there are people in this country that are trying to destroy this country, and they happen to be radicals of different groups. And you should be able to talk about it without getting banned from Twitter, Facebook, and everything else.
Let's talk about Laura Loomer for a second, Larry, because she's been under a lot of pressure lately. They have banned her, of course, from Twitter. They've banned her now from Facebook. Chase closed her bank account. It's difficult to imagine that this could happen in the United States of America. Someone somewhere has decided that Laura is disallowed from having money. There are people who murder people and steal millions of dollars and do things illegally that cause people to get sick, and they're allowed to have bank accounts and Twitter accounts. This is really a remarkable situation, what's gone on with Laura.
Well, Facebook made a mistake. Okay, everybody trips up. They tripped up a lot, actually. They're about ready to get fined by the FTC for billions of dollars, which to them is like a penny in their pocket, so it doesn't really amount to anything. But they made a mistake, because when they banned Laura, and of course they banned others, but they called Laura dangerous in a press release. And then others picked up on it and called her a white supremacist, which she's not, and all these other things. So now we're outside of the Communications Decency Act. We're into defamation. And that's the case that we're going to be bringing against Facebook. They defamed Laura, and they're in a lot of trouble with punitive damages. Maybe we'll start our own network. We can compete with Fox.
Yeah.
But it's unbelievable that, you say anything, and they just pile on. They call you any name, and they think that they can get away with it with impunity. So among the most important things that I'm doing, besides the citizens' grand juries and trying to indict Mueller, and we will indict him and the others, is our leftist media strike force, because we're hitting back, and we're not just talking about it. You listen to Hannity on Fox News. We don't have media as we know it. It's dead. Journalism in this country is dead. Fine, Sean. Okay, I've heard it every single time in your monologue. But what is it that someone's doing about it? And that's what we're doing. We're bringing these cases. And when I bring them, there's a cost to be paid. I won't be on these networks anymore. I've sued Fox as well for Laurie Loon. I'll never be on there again. A woman who was sexually harassed and covered up by people in and around Roger Ailes, like Suzanne Scott, who currently runs Fox. We sued her last week. So I'm doing what I think's right because, our founding fathers didn't worry about whether they were going to get on Fox News when they took on King George III.
Yeah.
They did what they thought was right. Maybe they didn't want to get on. They knew they were going to get on King George III's mega network in London or something like that.
Well, I support you 100%, Larry, and I agree. There's really nobody else doing this. This is why I'm constantly reminding people that they need to go to freedomwatchusa.org and not just look at it and click on it and sign the petitions. That is good, but it's important that people contribute financially, even if it's a small amount of money. We want Larry and his team to be pushing for these things. We cannot have, look, even if you disagree with what Laura says, you've got to recognize that deplatforming, defunding, I mean, this is, Laura hasn't been to trial, Laura hasn't been convicted of a crime. They just decided that they're going to take away her access to these things.
We're going to bring a lawsuit, and I'll tell you something, that they banned her in part because she allegedly said Islam is a religion of hate. Okay, I don't know the exact words. Okay, I've got to research it some more. But, truth is a defense. And if they want to get into that, we'll just read portions of the Quran. Okay, granted, no religion's perfect. Okay, and like I said, not all Muslim people are bad people. There are good Muslims out there. But she didn't mean to attack the entire Muslim community. What she's saying is that people like Ilham Omar, who are practicing an extreme form of Islam and have this hatred, they are using this religion as a way to harm Christians and Jews and others. And if you can't say that in this society, and you can't say that on Fox News, by the way, I might add, then we can't resolve the issue that we have, which is, this hate-filled society. We've got to exercise it and get it out there and get rid of it.
Well, we've gotten so far away from the concept of freedom of speech, Larry. I mean, even if a person said something like that, aren't people free to say things that are mean or hateful? Or, that's freedom. They're not compelling people to go do things. They're not instructing people to take action that would constitute criminal activity. The KKK, the Nazis, they all have freedom of speech. Louis Farrakhan has freedom of speech. He says Jews are termites or whatever it is that he said a bunch of pretty asinine things. I think Jesse Jackson once called New York City Hymietown. So, he's free to say stupid crap like that, but then people can form their own opinion about him. And frankly, I think Laura should be free to say whatever she wants, falling short of instructing people to take criminal action.
That's right. These entities say they're private entities, but they've taken on the mantle of a public forum. They have a monopoly, and that's why the case that we have, the antitrust case, which seeks to end this discrimination against conservatives, I'll be filing the new one to break up these companies. They're an oligopoly, and they collude with each other, and they move in parallel fashion to discriminate and restrain trade. That's why we have to break them up. And there are people on both sides of the aisle who talk about that, but they don't do anything on Capitol Hill. They have the ability to legislate here. Going back to when I was a young lawyer at the Reagan Justice Department, I was on the trial team that broke up AT&T, the telephone monopoly. AT&T at that time controlled everything, equipment, services, everything. There's only one company. And the FCC could never figure out how they were charging consumers when they couldn't get access to their costing, their internal costing. So we went into court. AT&T had an antitrust exemption at the time, and we broke them up. And look at the result. Look at all the competition, the cell phones, the services that we have today.
Yeah.
If we can break up these social media companies and have more competition, and that's good for the country. It doesn't matter whether you're left, right, center, whether you're straight, gay, whether you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, whether you're atheist or religious, feminist or otherwise. we need to have a discourse. It has to be civil, but we have to be able to talk clearly.
Yeah.
And there are people out there in every group that, are hateful and are causing our country to go into a steep decline. Judaism and Christianity is a fine religion. Okay, I believe in it. You won't find anything in the Bible about killing infidels. Let's put it that way. But there are people, that have claimed to be Christians and Jews who have harmed people, and they need to be dealt with, just like Muslims who do the same thing.
Right.
But the difference is that Islam, does teach certain things which, frankly, in my view, are not compatible with the concepts of either Jesus Christ or Moses, for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, just going back to what you were talking about, AT&T, I mean, it's not that long ago, when I was in even high school and college, that I can remember oppressively expensive long-distance calling rates. I'm sure you recall, Larry, when back in the day, if you were talking to someone, even from California to New York, I was like, oh, I'm on the phone long distance, and don't interrupt me. It was a big deal. That is a non-thing anymore. You spend hours and hours talking to friends in Japan, China, Australia, whatever, and the calls are, pennies, and that is in part due to what you're talking about, the breakup of these monopolies.
I remember when I started as an international trade lawyer, I would want to let foreign companies know, because I represented importers and exporters, that I was available to represent them, which I could do in the District of Columbia. I was a young guy. I was competing against big law firms. And to call them would cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And to send a telex would be the same. And today you can do it for free. You can call them on WhatsApp. It costs nothing.
Right.
And, it's just unbelievable what competition creates. And we need more competition in the conservative media. I watch Fox News because I have to, okay? And I think that's the way most people feel today. But we need a stronger Sinclair broadcasting. We need a stronger One American News. We need a stronger Newsmax. We need others to come into the market to compete with different ideas, particularly since Fox is moving left lately. So that's why what you do is important, and what I do is important, and Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman at Radio America, because we're getting it out in a pure fashion. We don't say what's politically correct, and we can't be restrained from doing that.
Yeah.
For the good of the country.
I think the American people, Larry, are pretty ready for some changes in social media. There's been a lot of development, in my view, in the past, say, 10 years. I remember when Barack Obama won in 2008, there really wasn't that much political discourse going on social media. Frankly, not that many people were on social media. Then there was this big uptake, primarily of Facebook and Twitter. And now in 2016, we saw the power that they've accumulated, and this debate it's really just 2 or 3 years old of what can be done with these. Laura did a great video the other day where she actually went to Jack Dorsey's house, which I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. People should be very careful about anything like this. The police did come, and Laura complied with what they wanted to do. She's allowed to go there. I mean, it's a public street that he's living on. She didn't trespass on his property. She's projecting.
Not, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. She's not a danger. You see, when you tell somebody that they're a danger, you make them radioactive.
Right.
You harm them. You destroy them. I mean, Laura does, some pranks, and, she's making a point. She occupied Nancy Pelosi's lawn for a while with illegal immigrants. It was kind of cute, actually. Maybe Nancy could have, hired one as her maid. I think it would have had no problem with that at the time. But she could have interviewed them out there. But I'm being facetious. But Laura's never hurt anybody. She's making a point with what she does, and she doesn't defraud anybody. She's upfront. She's not like Sacha Baron Cohen.
Right.
She says what she's doing. She went to the governor of California and jumped his fence,
Yeah, and that's a great point, Larry. So Sacha Baron Cohen uses deception to get someone to sign a contract that basically allows Sacha Baron Cohen to defame the guy and publicly broadcast that. Laura didn't deceive anybody. She went there. She walked right up. She's Laura Loomer. She shows up as Laura Loomer. she made a really good point in the video she did at Jack Dorsey's house, where she spoke about how frequently Jack Dorsey has commented that Twitter is the public square and that access to social media is a human right. But yet at the same time, they're denying Laura these rights. It seems like Jack Dorsey has said a number of things that could come back to bite him.
Well, and again, they're making mistakes now. Zuckerberg's making mistakes. In fact, there's talk about going after him personally at the FTC. That's not going to happen, believe me. But he's a big supporter of the Democrats and the left. But when you send out a press release claiming that someone's a danger, when NPR, which is funded by taxpayers, is calling Laura a white supremacist, which she's not. Wow. It's out of control. They think they're untouchable. And that's why I said, hey, among the most important things that I'm doing, I've become a real expert on defamation. I had cases, before this. I have a defamation verdict against Judicial Watch, as a matter of fact. They defamed me years ago, and I tried it myself. I was judge. I was the lawyer, I was the witness, I was the paralegal, I was everything. It was like a Woody Allen movie. And I still won in front of a jury that was very pro-Democrat in Miami, Florida. But it's very important that we challenge them and not let them get away with this. And it's the American people that need to do it, because the politicians have let this thing fester. It's gotten worse and worse. And where were the Republicans when they controlled both houses of Congress? They could have legislated an end to this. They didn't. And all we're asking for is to enforce the Bill of Rights and the Constitution.
Right.
We're all equal. We're all equal. We all have the same rights.
And you spoke earlier, Larry, about how, Devin Nunes was unable to find the time to meet with you when he was the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. I think he was too busy suing, cows on Twitter and things like that. That really is a major failing of a congressional representative, because this was a great opportunity for Devin Nunes to introduce amendments to the DCA or the CDA 230 that could have helped build this sort of groundswell, help build some momentum in some of the pushback that these social media companies are starting to experience. But instead,
Devin Nunes, look, he's got his problems. Okay, he did some good things. Okay, but the big things he shied away from. Okay, this mass surveillance against the American people that Snowden revealed. I had other clients at the time that revealed it.
Right.
He didn't want to get into that. Neither did Richard Burr on the Senate side. Neither did Warner, who was the ranking member. And the reason for that is that if they go for the jugular with these intelligence agencies, as I said before, stuff's going to start flying out of their files about them and their family and their loved ones. And these people are enslaved to a government which is even more powerful than the President of the United States. Now, thank God we've got a president today, Trump, who for the most part is very, very courageous. But sometimes he takes bad advice. And in fact, there's some suggestion that the Trump administration wants to bring this mass surveillance back, this metadata program. That would be a big mistake. And the president should remember how it was used against him and his family and how they tried to destroy him. And they're still trying to destroy him. You should remember John Brennan at the CIA, James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. The president gets bad advice sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to educate him, you and me and others, because he's got this inner circle there. And, if he sees it on Fox News, he thinks it's a good idea. I mean, he needs to hear it elsewhere, too.
Yeah.
And he's not getting the right advice. His judges that he's appointed are almost as bad as the Obama and Clinton ones. That's my experience so far. Who were they recommended by? Don McGahn, who sold the president out in 30 hours of testimony with Mueller. This is the guy who was putting the names of judges on his desk. Establishment Republican.
And McGahn was the counsel for the White House, right?
Yeah, McGahn's a traitor. Okay, he's a traitor. Okay, he had no right to testify for 30 hours, going through executive privilege and attorney-client privilege,
right,
to implicate the president the way he did.
So much of this stuff is out the window. It's crazy. Now, Larry, in our last couple of minutes here, let's talk about this just announced subpoena of Donald Trump Jr. There have been, people, Twitterati, who are just, it's like chum in the water. What are the implications of this? I thought they found that Donald Trump Jr. did really nothing wrong with this Trump Tower meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya.
Well, it's to rough the president up. It's his son, obviously. They're hitting a nerve. And the reason they're bringing Trump Jr. in, Donald Jr., is because he doesn't have an executive privilege. He wasn't working in the White House. Doesn't have an attorney-client privilege. He wasn't the president's lawyer. So they're going to work him over. It's the same way they worked Sheriff Arpaio over, by defaming him, calling him a felon. We've got lawsuits on that. You won't believe this, but I'm intervening on this. But Gerald Nadler and 19 other Democrats filed a motion to intervene in Sheriff Arpaio's attempts to have his misdemeanor conviction vacated because he got a pardon. And as a matter of law, it should be vacated. In other words, be taken off the books. And they come in and say, and this is the ultimate hypocrisy, a contempt citation isn't even a crime, and therefore the president could not pardon Arpaio. So let's put it back where it was and send Arpaio to jail. This is Gerald Nadler and 19 Democrats. I'm going to be filing a motion. The sheriff just gave me approval today to have them sanctioned for filing a frivolous pleading. Let Gerald Nadler and company pay my attorney's fees out of his own pocket.
Nice.
For this frivolous act. But they go after Arpaio because that's the way you get to the president. Arpaio's a strong advocate against illegal immigration. So, make him the whipping boy to get to the president, make the president the whipping boy to get to Arpaio. So Donald Jr. becomes the way you can get to the president and to smear him and his family shamelessly. And, somebody should be looking into what Gerald Nadler's got in his past. I remember during the Chinagate hearings, he did everything he could to cover up illegal bribes that the Clintons took from the Chinese. He had no problem with that. But now he wants to destroy, what I consider to be one of the greatest presidents in our history. I believe Trump is already at that level, and I don't care whether he makes inopportune remarks every now and then. I was listening to his press conference today. He understands what's going on, and he's doing what he thinks is right. And I don't know many presidents that have done that in my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree with you. What you're saying, Larry. I am also generally overall pleased with Donald Trump's performance. No president is perfect. I wish he wasn't doing some of the things he's doing relative to Venezuela, etc. But I think he's been very effective, and I think he's dealing with some of the most important issues that affect each of us. I'm shocked to hear that Gerald Nadler is an attorney. I thought he was just a bloated moron, but it's surprising to see that he would act in the way that he does, understanding the law. But then again, some of these people who become attorneys do it just so that they can understand how to circumvent the law. So, well,
look at Chris Cuomo, who I've sued for Arpaio, who called Arpaio a felon. Cuomo got into Yale undergrad. Probably his dad, Mario, got him in there because he's not altogether that bright. But he also went to Fordham Law School, passed the New York Bar, and is a lawyer. Now, he knows the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor. He knew what he was doing when he defamed Sheriff Arpaio. He's the one that's in the biggest jeopardy in terms of these defamation lawsuits in front of Judge Lambert, because he was a lawyer. He knew the difference. Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, who's, whatever. I mean, look, he's got a good delivery like Hannity. He's the flip side of Hannity, but in terms of the integrity of either of them, they're not great on either side.
Chris Cuomo is the guy who told CNN's audience that it was illegal to look at WikiLeaks. So the stupidity is almost as difficult to understand as the hypocrisy.
I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know if we have time, but in the days that I was friendly with Roger Ailes in the beginning, when Judicial Watch came into being and we were making a lot of news, I could walk into Ailes' office in New York. And I was walking in one day, and I'm looking on the monitor, and I see Chris Cuomo doing consultant work, making comments on Fox. And I said to him, Ailes, Roger, I said, why do you have Chris Cuomo on the air? And he said to me, he was kind of a wise guy, and he had some humor. He said, if I'm going to have some GD liberal on Fox News, I'm going to have the dumbest one I can find. So,
that's a great story.
That's Cuomo.
Very true, I have to admit. Well, Larry, we are just about out of time. People should definitely go over to freedomwatchusa.org and financially sponsor Larry and his team over there. Make sure you check out special Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. That is on Radio America, and you can get to it by going to freedomwatchusa.org. People can purchase Larry's book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. You're going to learn a lot about Larry's time in the DOJ and why he does the things that he does. People who sponsor Freedom Watch for more than $250 are going to get a free 4-volume set. It's the Essays of a Mad Man, and Larry seems pretty calm and happy today, so you should definitely order that, order the book, and sponsor Freedom Watch so he can carry on with the work that he's doing. I want to thank our generous sponsors on Patreon and Subscribestar, and if you're watching right now on YouTube or Facebook or one of the platforms that's almost undoubtedly, imminently going to ban these broadcasts, it's more important than ever that you get onto patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and sponsor the program. I want to thank Larry for joining me again today. It's always great speaking with you, Larry.
Thanks, Jason. You do great work, and I want them to support you, too. We need Jason Goodmans.
Thank you very much, Larry. I'll speak to you very soon, and thanks very much for watching, everybody. Talk to you soon.
God bless.